All right, part 3 now. This shouldn't take too much longer. So anyway, as I was explaining, the issue with Korea, with North Korea becoming a communist country and South Korea becoming a democratic country. And so because of World War II pushing out the Japanese, this is what's happened. And it is still the same today. North Korea is a communist country and South Korea is a democratic country. And the question of unification still gets talked about. But this split between North and South Korea is going to cause a war, which is called the Korean War. So June 25th, 1950, North Korea, supported by Communist China and the Soviet Union, decided to invade South Korea to try to unite all of Korea into one communist country. So President Truman sent U.S. naval and air troops to aid South Korea. I mean, we already had troops there anyway, but they upped the presence of the U.S. military in order to try to fight off this invasion. So they crossed the 38th parallel, which separated North and South Korea, and they invaded. At the same time, the United States called upon the United Nations, the newly formed United Nations, to also step in and act, which they did. And so September 1950, the United States, the South Korean Army, and the United Nations troops were on the edge of being defeated. But with U.S. efforts, they were able to push the North Koreans beyond the 38th parallel, through North Korea and close to the Chinese river, or close to the Chinese border, which the border between North Korea and China is called the Yalu River. And so China pipes up and says, if the United States or South Korea or United Nations troops cross into China, then China will be forced to become involved. And so in specifically helping North Korea push out the South Korean invaders south of the 38th parallel. And so this is looking to shape up to be possibly another world war starting in Asia, with the United States and South Korea on one side and the Soviet Union and North Korea and China on the other side. And this is, you know, the desire to keep this conflict small and not make it another world war will hinge upon U.S. leadership. Okay? So Truman feared another world war in Asia. They decided against going into China and invading China. So the United States will end up fighting Chinese troops in Korea, but they will not go into China and will refuse to go into China. Okay. General MacArthur from World War II, you know, fame of coming to the Philippines and returning to the Philippines, he openly and publicly criticized Truman and his desire to keep this war contained in Korea. And MacArthur, you know, wasn't secretive about this. He let everybody know. Did interview after interview. Truman's weak. You know, he needs to widen this war. We need to drop nuclear weapons on China. And he was very open, MacArthur was, about what he wanted to do, which ultimately would have widened the war a lot and could have possibly brought the United States and Soviet Union closer to actual war with each other. So Truman calls MacArthur back to the United States, and MacArthur is, of course, when he comes back to the United States, is hailed as a hero. You know, here's the guy that had liberated the Philippines again. And then MacArthur will be the guy who will organize Japan after the atomic bomb and rebuild Japan. And so he was a big-time hero. And then when he came and he met with Truman, Truman said, "You're done. You know, I can't have you publicly criticizing me and being insubordinate, not doing what I'm asking you to do as your commander-in-chief. And so he fired MacArthur and he turned to another general that would help him focus on containment and keeping this war in Korea. So, which it did. It successfully was kept smaller, but a lot of people forget the war in Korea and what happened there, and how close it was to World War II and in the 50s and things like that. But it was a big time thing, a big time war. It was a very influential war. So, all right. And you guys are going to read about this. There are questions on Canvas on this assignment here, or excuse me, reading and then questions. And so the title of the reading will be Changes in Policy and the Korean War Ends. And that's going to be here on Canvas. And then there's going to be questions for you to answer. And then you're going to turn those questions in on Canvas as an attachment or a text entry, just like I showed you earlier. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me or look at the first part of that video again to see how you can attach two documents onto the same thing. So, all right, if you have any questions, feel free to email me. Other than that, I'll see you on the next recording for Friday.